15 years ago, trainer Jonathan Brooks lost everything, and I don't know, his beloved chimpanzee Bo was taken from him with no warning and no goodbye. A cold system treated Bo like property, tearing apart a bond built on love, memory, and silent understanding. But then, after all those years, Bo raised his hand and signed one word that changed everything. Just wait until you see the moment that brought an entire room to tears, and how justice at last found its voice without a single word spoken. At a quiet primate sanctuary nestled deep in the woods of South Carolina, the days passed in a rhythm of routine and care. Caretakers moved from one enclosure to the next, refilling water, cleaning habitats, offering fruits and small enrichment puzzles. Most of the chimps were playful, some mischievous, some loud, others full of restless energy. But one stood apart. His name was Bo. Bo was 24 years old, older than most of the residents, with patches of gray around his chin and a slow, thoughtful way of moving. He didn't bang on the bars. He didn't throw fruit or chatter wildly like the others. Most days, he just sat on a large flat rock in the corner of his enclosure, staring out across the grass as if waiting for something. Or someone. He wasn't angry. He wasn't excited. He was simply still, watchful, quietly dignified. And that silence made people stop. New volunteers were always warned. That's Bo. Be gentle with him. He remembers. 15 years earlier, Bo wasn't in a sanctuary. He was the star of a traveling show, a circus act that toured small towns across the country. Back then, his world was color and movement, bright lights and loud applause. But for Bo, the real heart of that world wasn't the crowd. It was a man named Jonathan Brooks. Jonathan wasn't just Bo's trainer. He was Bo's everything, a constant companion, a caretaker, a friend. Jonathan taught Bo sign language, bathed him when he was little, took him to parks, let him fall asleep in his lap during long trips between shows. They were inseparable, and in Bo's young eyes, Jonathan wasn't human. He was family. But all of that shattered in an instant. When the circus filed for bankruptcy, the animals were auctioned off. Jonathan begged to keep Bo. He pleaded, but the law didn't care about their bond. The chimpanzees were state property, reassigned to licensed facilities across the country. Jonathan had no legal claim. All he could do was watch as Bo was loaded into a transport cage. The last image burned into his memory was of Bo reaching his long arms through the metal bars, fingers stretching for him, before folding his hands to his chest in one small, trembling sign: love. Then he was gone. For years, Jonathan tried to track him down, but records were sealed and sanctuaries rotated animals frequently. Eventually, he took a job working in a wildlife rehabilitation center, channeling his grief into caring for other animals that had no one else. He never stopped hoping, but he stopped asking. It hurt too much. Then, one day, out of nowhere, an envelope arrived at his desk. No return address. Just the name of a sanctuary, printed in small letters. Inside was a letter from a behavioral coordinator at the South Carolina facility. We have a chimpanzee here, quiet, reserved, not like the others. We recently came across some old VHS tapes during a facility cleanup, footage of a younger chimp performing signs under human guidance. We showed the tapes to him, and he began signing, repeatedly, the same sequence, directed toward the screen. We believe it may be your Bo. Jonathan didn't hesitate. He packed a bag that night. The next morning, he was on a plane. Back at the sanctuary, the staff prepared as best they could. But no one, not even the most experienced primate handlers, could predict what was about to happen when the gate opened, and two souls, separated by 15 long years, would finally meet again. When Jonathan stepped inside the enclosure, no one breathed. There were no handlers restraining the chimp, no glass barrier, just a gentle man standing still, and a chimpanzee watching him from across the space, like a ghost from another lifetime. Bo didn't run. He didn't make a sound. He froze, as if the world had tilted, and he wasn't sure it was real. The old chimp, his fur streaked with silver and his eyes dimmed by the weight of memory, took one slow step, then another. His feet barely made a sound on the dirt floor, his head tilted, brow furrowed. Something deep within him was stirring, rising like smoke from a long dormant flame. Jonathan dropped to his knees, He didn't reach forward. He simply opened his arms, tears already brimming, and whispered the only words he could manage. "I missed you, Bo." For a moment, time didn't move. The wind outside faded. Even the birds grew silent. And then, a sound, barely audible. A soft crack, the shifting of old joints, the tension of muscles holding memory. Bo raised his hand, and with slow, deliberate care, he signed. One hand touched his chest. 3 fingers curled inward, just as he had learned as a young chimp. Then his arm extended outward, and finally, his long fingers pointed gently at the man kneeling before him. "Love. You." A sharp gasp came from behind the fence. One volunteer dropped the clipboard she was holding. Another fell to her knees, hands trembling over her mouth. One of the caretakers turned away, wiping tears that streamed down without warning. Later, a staff member would say, "That wasn't just a sign. That was a message carved into time. He didn't forget. He never forgot. He carried it all these years, waiting." Bo didn't hesitate after that. He walked forward and pressed his body gently into Jonathan's chest. Then slowly, with the caution of an elder who had waited too long, he settled down and rested his head in Jonathan's lap, the same way he used to as a youngling, when the world was safe and soft. Jonathan broke down, his arms wrapped around the creature he once called his child. Silent tears slid down his face. For 15 years, he had lived with the guilt, the crushing belief that he'd failed to protect his best friend. And yet, here he was, alive, remembering, forgiving. But Bo had one more surprise. When Jonathan had arrived at the sanctuary, he brought with him an old canvas bag. Inside it was something yellow and a little worn. A stuffed toy elephant, Bo's favorite from long ago. Jonathan had kept it all these years, untouched, tucked in a drawer he never opened. He handed the toy to the staff, who gently placed it at the edge of the enclosure before the meeting. Now, as Bo lifted his head, he noticed the soft yellow shape lying in the grass. For a beat, he didn't move. Then his eyes widened. He raced toward it. Faster than he'd moved all day, scooped it up in his long arms, and let out a sharp series of joyful squeaks, nearly dancing in place. He pressed the toy to his chest and signed again, over and over, like a heartbeat. "Love, love, love." And in that moment, no one could deny it. Bo wasn't just intelligent. He wasn't just remembering. He was loving, actively, fiercely, endlessly. Within a day, the world knew his name. The video, just over a minute long, showed an aging chimpanzee raising his hand, forming the word love, and collapsing into the arms of a man he hadn't seen in 15 years. It needed no words. It was pure. It went viral overnight. Millions watched. News anchors wept. Commenters from across the globe wrote, "If a chimp can remember love for 15 years, what's our excuse?" He didn't forget, he forgave. A journalist from National Geographic traveled to meet Bo and Jonathan. After watching them together, she whispered, "Bo didn't just survive. He remembered what matters. Love, loyalty, connection. That makes him more human than many of us." Moved by the response, Jonathan was invited to speak before Congress. Calmly, with his heart in his voice, he shared Bo's story, the years apart, the reunion, the yellow elephant. "He can't speak," Jonathan said, "but when he finally could, he said a love. We must do better." His testimony sparked a national debate about animal rights and the use of primates in entertainment. Bo became the face of that change. Back at the sanctuary, the metal plaque Primate #24 was removed. In its place, Bo, age 24, loves yellow elephants, bananas, and Jonathan Brooks. Visitors brought yellow toys and stood quietly at his fence, but Bo always seemed to look past them, just in case he came back again. On the final day of filming, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Bo turned, raised his hand, and signed it once more. Love. And in that moment, the world remembered. Sometimes the loudest messages are the ones said in silence.